आपने टोपी कहाँ से दी है? अच्छा मस्जिद की टोपी है? अच्छा अच्छा ओके बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहि रब्बिल आलमीन वस्सलातु वस्सलामु अला रसूलिल्लाहि व अला आलिहि व सहबिहि अजमईन रब्बि इश्रह ली सदरी व यस्सिर ली अमरी वहलुल उक़दतम मिन लिसानी यफ़क़हू क़ौली. Inshallah, in today's talk we will continue our talk that we were doing before the Ramadan regarding the life of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh. We had a session regarding the judicial system that was placed in the time of Umar bin Khattab, and today we'll continue the judicial system. It's a little bit, it's going to take a couple of sessions, inshallah. But today's session is important because it talks about how Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh in his time, he set up the characteristics that are required for the judges to have. And it's a very key thing, especially living in today's time. And the brothers who are aware of the current situation in Pakistan and India nowadays, where it is a norm for the judiciary is one of the key things which is very corrupted to the point that the judges, for example, you will find many of them are involved in like taking bribes or doing businesses with the people who are there, the people who, among whom they are trying to make a decision. And those business dealings, those bribery that result into more corruption between the people. And currently, we can see what is happening in Pakistan. And we'll talk about that later on a little bit, try to link it back to what happened in the time of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh. And it is important. And actually, while I was coming, I just was searching some of the things which happen in the society here in the United States as well when it comes to judiciary. For example, if you just search any one of you, and you don't have to go too far, and I have read many news in my lifetime here where you hear the news that somebody was released after 20 years or 30 years, even 40 years, and they was found not guilty. That there were proofs later on found that the person who was imprisoned for that many years, can you imagine? There was one person I was looking for, he was imprisoned for 43 years. After 43 years of wrongful imprisonment, he was released. And his name was Kevin Strickland. He was released after 43 years. This is a lifetime that whenever we talk about that kind of even if a person has been released now, who's going to return back those 43 years to him? Who's going to return back those 43 years that he missed with his family, with his loved ones, with his friends, and on and on and on. And whatever the youth that he had has been taken away from him during those times. So this is all because of unjust judiciary which is out there, whether it's the judges, whether it's the wukala or the attorneys, whosoever are involved in this. And on top of it, the system itself, which is a man-made system that caused more and more corruption, as we have talked in the past as well. Now, talking about Umar al-Khattab, before we talk about that, just one small thing, so we will know that when it comes to the judges in Islam, there are three types of judges. One is called Qadi Hisba, or it's called Muhtasib as well, and Qadi Madalim and Qadi Am. Qadi Am, which is the Qadi Khusumat also. Khusuma in Urdu also, with some time in the Fusha Urdu we use, it is for disputes among the people. And so the Qadi Khusumat is the one who takes care of the disputes between the people. Hisba is the one who goes into the marketplaces and see if there is any kind of corruption is going on within the market. Like, for example, he will go and check that, for example, somebody is selling rice or lentils or some spices. Did he add water to it so it will weigh more, for example? Because sometimes people used to do was you will see a heap of some sort of grocery or something, and then underneath you will see there's some water and makes it heavier. So these kind of things will be looked into. And this is just a basic example I said, but in the marketplace could be more than just selling and buying grocery, any of the things in the marketplaces that have been sold. So that person, he goes to the market, checks that the things are doing as Sharia allows. And if there is any kind of wrong, these are going, he or she, because it could be a she as well, in that kind of a position, can issue a ticket to the person right there. It will not be like years and months are taken, or decades are taken some time to figure out if the person has committed any crime or not. This is one of the key things that we find in Islam, that the justice is provided swiftly, and the people are not imprisoned just because of some doubts, just because somebody wants to have accuse somebody of something. Rather, you have to prove somebody guilty first. Otherwise, a person is innocent unless it's proven guilty. That's the key thing that Islam taught. And even the West took it later on, that's a different story, because you cannot just take one piece of Islam and don't leave the rest of it. That does not help. So it has to be taken as a whole, and that really provides the justice. And this is why a lot of time this kind of a game has been played against Islam as well. That people will do is they will take part of Islam and they will start talking about as if that's only Islam is only that. For example, they'll talk about when it comes to judiciary kind of thing, only they will talk about the uqubat. Uqubat is a punishment system in Islam. Punishment system in Islam does not work without the rest of the Islam is there. So it has to be the whole Islam when you provide. Then you think about it. For example, in Islam, 13 centuries Islam ruled over. Less than 200 people's hands were cut, for example, for stealing. 200. Once I was giving a lecture in one of the universities about this very same subject, and one of the non-Muslims who was in the audience, he goes like, if you apply this kind of a punishment in the United States, half of the people's hand will be cut. So, of course, because when you talk about a system without just a part of the system, without the rest of the system, that's what's going to happen. Actually, that will make it injustice, because Islam is not like this, that it will take away the rights of the people and then they ask the people why you did not act the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded you. No. Well, Islam provides an environment that really helps the people to follow the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then after that, if somebody wants to be outlier, still wants to do a crime, of course, that needs to be taken care of by the punishment system. So Islam, the punishment system is a very small thing in Islam. If you pick up any fiqh books, and there's one book which is called Al-Mughni. Al-Mughni is a Hanbali school of thought book by Ibn Qudama. It's about 38, 39 volume book of fiqh. And you will find barely half a volume that will be talking about a volume talking about the uqubat or the punishment system in Islam. What about the rest of Islam? So if you take just one small, tiny part of it and don't apply the rest of it, of course that can become oppressive. So Islam is not oppressive because from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know that. But if you take parts and bits, that's not only oppressive for the people, but the one who are applying, that can cause problem for them in this dunya and in the akhirah, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Islam has to be taken as a whole. Okay, now talking about the judiciary, the judges, the qualities of the judges required, and in the time of Umar al-Khattab, how it was done. And somebody can say that, why are we talking about Umar al-Khattab and not talk about what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about it? Look, when we talk about Khulafai Rashidin, the rightly guided Khulafa, when we say rightly guided, it means they are the one who implemented the Quran and Sunnah. This is why we call them rightly guided. So they were implementing the Quran and Sunnah, and we see the practical implementation of it. Yes, we can always go back, and each one of them we can find the evidences from the Quran and Sunnah why Umar al-Khattab said something like this, or why Abu Bakr said something like this, or Ali said it, or Uthman said it. Of course, these are the Sahaba. They were doing the ijtihad in some cases where it was needed, and they were not the one who were prophet like Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was directed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who was dictated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who was ma'soom, who would not make a mistake. But a Sahabi can make a mistake individually. We understand that. But collectively, Sahaba do not make mistake. Okay, now moving on. So what are the things that Umar al-Khattab placed in the judiciary or for the judges as the qualities? One of the key things was, which is the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning that you have the consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He understands the sincerity towards Allah azza wa jal when he is doing an action. Meaning, you have always back of your mind that you are accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can you imagine a person who has this kind of accountability, how his behavior will be? And that's what Umar al-Khattab made sure when he was choosing somebody to be a judge. That is one of the most important things that has to be in front of him, because when he is making judgments, he is thinking of it because he's accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and whatever judgment he makes, Allah azza wa jal will hold him accountable on the day of judgment. Yes, if he does what Allah has commanded, that will be something good for him. That will be something good for him in this dunya and in the akhirah. So taqwa, or the fear, sincerity towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is one of the things. And then second thing, which is a judge's job, is what? To make a decision among them. So second thing he made sure was, a person who's making judgment, he has a precise understanding of the issue in hand. You cannot make a judgment if you do not understand what the case is about. Simple as that. So if a case has been brought in front of a judge, that is, let's say, some medical issue. Somebody went to the hospital and there was some malpractice has happened. Now he wants to make sure that whose fault was it? Whether it was really the doctor's fault, or it was he did all of what he could have, and then whatever happened to the patient that happened. But for that, he has to have an understanding of that medical issue that has been brought in front of him. It could be anything. It could be a fraud been done, for example, in business, or somebody has taken the loan from somebody. So all these things, you have to understand the reality. So the person, whoever it is making the decision, he has to have the precise understanding of the case that he has under his hand. That's number two. Number three thing was ruling according to the Islamic Sharia. If a judge is going to make a ruling according to Sharia of Islam, obviously he has to have the knowledge about the Sharia, about the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to which that a person is making the judgment. So this is Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, he made sure about this issue, that the judgment is made according to the Sharia. And even whether it's a Muslim or non-Muslim. Okay, why am I saying non-Muslim? We know in Islam, for example, there are personal issues for which the non-Muslims are allowed to deal with each other according to their personal laws. Like, for example, the marriage laws. So the way the marriage works in their, for example, Judaism or Christianity, then it will be ruled accordingly. Now, there was, in the time of Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, there was a Jewish woman came and she said, my son has died and the Jews are saying that I have no right to his estate, meaning the tarika, or which is called the inheritance that you're supposed to get if your son dies. Even in Islam, for example, Islam allows the mother to take, I believe it's about 1/6 of the parts of the inheritance that he has left. Now, so Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, he said, so why he said to the Jews, why don't you give her her rights? They said, we cannot find anything in our book that gives her any rights. So Umar said, is that in the Torah? They said no, meaning there's nothing to be given to the mother. They said no, it's not in the Torah. So he said, okay, then where is it? They said it's there's a book called Mishnah. So he's asked, what is Mishnah? They said, a book that was written by scholars and wise men. So it's not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is just made up by some of those rabbis or whatsoever they had. So Umar cursed them and said, go and give her rights, meaning according to the Sharia of Islam. So this is how Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh made the decision, because they were usurping the right of the women. And this is unfortunate that there are many places we find that the rights of the women have been usurped. And sometimes you find in the Muslim lands today as well, but I have talked about this quite at a large extent before, that in the Muslim lands, when those rights have been usurped from the women, it's not because of Islam. As a matter of fact, it is because of lack of Islam. Because we are not living by Islam. We are not implementing Islam. We have adopted the systems which are from the West or from other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed. And we are ending up these kind of oppressive situations, even in the Muslim lands as well. Whatsoever those oppressive things that we are seeing, this is a result of not following the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that was number three. Number four thing that Umar al-Khattab made sure was consulting others about any matter for which he is not sure, meaning doing the shura. Shura means a consultation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to do the shura. And we have talked about this subject as well already, but just want to remind, shura does not mean shura will make laws. Shura is to consult, to come to better understanding, to understand an issue in hand. And if there is something mubah, and among the mubah things, two permissible things, you are trying to choose one. That's a separate issue. But you cannot trump the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning you cannot just put the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the side and say, oh, because we agree, majority of us, so we will do what we want to do. No, we still have to follow what Allah has revealed. Even not only the majority, even everybody says, again, other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed, we still have to follow what Allah has revealed. Simple as that. Okay. Now, number five. He mentioned very clearly about treating disputes equally. So the person who brings the case, the plaintiff and the defendant, both of them have to be treated equally. This is a very important thing. And Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh wrote to Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, he said, treat people equally when you address them, so that no noble man will hope that you will side with him unfairly, and no weak man will despair of your justice. Because this is a very common thing, that if you are rich enough, you can buy justice, isn't it? You go to east or west. And in the man-made laws, this is what happens. If you are rich enough, if you are powerful enough, you're strong enough, you can buy justice in your favor. And that's what Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh was making sure. He was telling the people who are the judges, look, make sure that the strong does not feel like he will get his way, and the weak does not think that he will be despaired. He doesn't think that he will going to get the justice, so he will not even bother. And there are incidents like this. There was an incident that Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anhu was a judge, and Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu actually made Ubay bin Ka'b radiallahu anhu, another great Sahabi Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made a claim against Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. He was a Khalifa of that time, about some garden. And Umar did not know about this, so they said, okay, let's find a judge. So Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anhu was a judge. They went to him. They were going to present the case. Now look what Zayd bin Thabit did. There are two different reports. One says he found a cushion and gave it to Umar bin Khattab to sit on, or a better seat for Umar bin Khattab to sit on. And Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, for him, that was sufficient to say this is not right to do. Because you cannot, just because he's Amir al-Mu'mineen, he should not be given any kind of different treatment than a normal person. So Umar, it was not like that. Umar was telling others to do something, and when it comes to himself, he was acting differently. He started from himself all the time. We find that not only on himself, his family, his close friends, whoever were close to him, anything that he wanted to implement over the people, he made sure first it's implemented on him and his family and the close one. So it will not become like as if this is for only the weak men on whom the laws of Allah to be applied. So he made sure that this is not. And he said, and he told Zayd bin Thabit that you have been unfair in your judgment at the outset. And he said, oh Zayd, rather let me sit with my opponent, because he wanted to be equal even in sitting. And same incident, I just want to bring it up as a refresher. When Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, when he took, there was a case came in front of him of Ali radiallahu anhu with another person. And while they were sitting equally, when he talked to Ali radiallahu anhu, he called him as Abu Hassan. While the other person, he called him by his real name. You know, Abu Hassan is a kunya. Kunya means you're calling somebody by his son's name, and this is in Arab culture, this is a way of giving respect to somebody. So Umar said, Ali frowned a little bit. So Umar thought that Ali is frowning because now he's sitting equally with the person. Ali said, no, I did that because the way you treated me was different than you treated the other person, because you called me by my kunya, by Abu Hassan, and the other person you call him by name. This is not equal. Subhanallah, they used to be to that extent. They wanted to make sure the judge should be aware of what he is doing. Okay. Number 6, it's always the case, and you'll find that in many cases, that encouraging the weak, because weak always we find that he think of it, he will not get the justice. So it's very important you encourage the weak. So Umar al-Khattab wrote to Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, he said, be kind to the one who is weak, so that he will be encouraged to speak. Otherwise, they don't even speak. They don't even have the courage to go. Think of today. How many of the people don't like to go to the court system because they know that they will be, they will run out of money to get the justice. The fees of the judges, fees of the court, fees of the attorneys. How long are they going to pay those fees to just get some small right that they are after? So most of the time, a weak does not even bother. And this way, the stronger becomes more and more oppressive. They think that they can get away with whatever they want. And that's what Umar Khattab makes sure, and he wrote to Muawiyah. And this is what, in general, was the case with in the time of Khulafa Rashidin. Another thing was dealing quickly with the case of a stranger. Stranger means somebody who's coming from outside, and he is not a person, a resident of the area. So in general, a person who's not a resident, who does not live, he does not have the house, he does not have, for example, his family or something, he wants to go back to his family. So he really wants the justice to be given swiftly, because otherwise he will not have probably money to survive in that new area, and plus his family needs him back. So Omar made sure, and he specifically gave this instruction. He said, for example, Abu Ubaidah, he writes at saying that pay extra attention to the stranger, for if he has to stay too long and be away from his family because of this case, he will forego his rights and return to his family. Okay. Number 8 thing, patience, or tahammul. In Urdu we also say tahammul or hilm. This is another important thing. Look, if a judge does not have these qualities, then he can make errors. There's a hadith of Rasulullah also talks about the issue of that you should not make a judgment when you are angry. You're in the state of anger, because when you're angry, you are overcome, and you will make a judgment that you will later on you will realize that you made a mistake. So, and it's not only anger. From this part, the qiyas has been made. Anything that overshadows your thinking process, then that in that state you don't make any judgment. For example, a person is very hungry, person is very thirsty, person is in the state of anxiety, or he's very anxious, or he has to use, for example, just the bathroom. And he could not just make a judgment at that time because he has to use the bathroom. No. So those situations must be avoided. So Umar al-Khattab wrote to Musa saying, beware of boredom, anger, anxiety, and feeling annoyed with people when passing judgment. Because when you are annoyed, you will just pass the judgment and you want to get away with it. Okay. Number 9. Avoiding everything that may influence the judgment. So that was about that. And then he said, besides the patience, and then I already talked about actually the things that causes the influence the judge. Number 10, deciding the basis of apparent evidence without probing into intentions. Okay. You know, this is something that happens a lot, even when we are discussing with each other sometime. And a person would come up, say, even though you are telling a person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this, and an action that you are doing is haram, for example, it should not be done. Many times we hear, brother, you are questioning my intentions. You hear this a lot. Why are you questioning my intentions? And this is exactly Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu said. And he said, Umar addressed the people and said, we knew you when the Messenger of Allah was amongst us, and the revelation would come down and tell us about you. Now we know you from what you say. Okay? So whoever appears to us be good, we will assume that he is good. Whoever appears to be bad, we will assume he is bad. What the intentions are, this is between the person and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We cannot question the intentions of the people, but what we can talk about is apparent action. And the judgments are done on apparent action, not on what's in the hearts of the people. Because none of us can say anything about the intentions of the people. It's only between Allah and the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So actions have to be decided, should be looked into, and the decision should be made on what is apparent. And we can see in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he showed us, so we will not be making these kind of mistakes of going after intentions. For example, even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about who the munafiqeen were in Medina, but his judgments against the munafiqeen were not based on the nifaq in their hearts. His judgment was whatever way they acted. Yeah, and for us, obviously, alhamdulillah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam showed us how to do this way and not by the heart. Otherwise, we can imagine what kind of a chaos we can be in. Then the judges or the rulers are making judgments based on what's in the hearts of the people. Subhanallah. And calling each other a munafiq and then say, okay, he's munafiq, khalas, that's all, he's over. So this is not the way Islam talks about. Islam talks about the way you make the judgment is based on what you see in the action. Number 11, the judges should be keen to bring about reconciliation also. Okay, it should not be, Islam is not out there to just go after the people or go look for the mistakes people have done or do the spying over the people or any of those things. Even the people come and they are, if they can be reconciled, for example, the two family members come and they have some issues, dispute with each other, try to reconciliation first. By the way, when you talk about reconciliation, reconciliation does not mean that you will be going against what the Sharia has commanded us. If the two people are doing something and one of them is going against the Sharia, in that case, you have to go according to the Sharia, what the command is there. But if this is a thing that is some misunderstanding that has happened, to try to reconcile the people's hearts. That's the best thing. Otherwise, whenever two family members, for example, they end up in court, whatever decision has been made, how do they come out of the court? We know they have grudges against each other after that. And that's what Umar ibn Khattab was saying. Umar said to Muawiyah, he wrote, strive to work out agreements among people when it is not clear who's in the right or if they are related, for settling issues in court because the court generates grudges. That's what Umar al-Khattab said to Muawiyah. Okay, now, and coming back to the haqq, that's the key thing. If the judges pass a ruling concerning some case, and then he changes his mind, this is very important to understand, guys. Meaning, his understanding about the case was, or his ijtihad can be about the issue, was one at the time of the judgment. And later on, he concluded that his judgment was wrong. It was a judgment of Islam, by the way. I'm not saying it was not judgment of Islam. Meaning, now he understands the opinion, other opinion was stronger than the way he made the judgment. In this case, you're not allowed to go back. Once the judgment is passed, based on Sharia, I'm not talking about it was based on something else. Because ikhtilaf is a different issue. You have difference of opinion. When you were making a judgment at that time, for you, that was the hukum of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You concluded and you made the judgment based on that. And later on, you find out something else. And this is one of the examples that was given in the life of Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, that it is about the people of Najran. And it says that, it is narrated that from Salim ibn Abi Ja'd said, if Ali were to have undone a judgment that had been passed by Umar, he would have undone his judgment concerning the people of Najran. Why did he say that? Because Ali had written down the treaty between the people of Najran and the Prophet ﷺ. Then their numbers increased at the time of Umar until he feared for the people concerning them. Then a disagreement arose between them and they came to Umar and asked him to compensate. And he did the compensation. And then they regretted it and something happened among them. So they came to him and asked him to let them off. And he refused to do that. See that? He did something, a judgment was passed, so he refused. And so when Ali became Khalifa, they came to him and said, "Oh, Amir al-Mu'mineen, you interceded for us and wrote the treaty with your right hand." Ali said, "Woe to you, Umar was right in what he did," meaning he did not undo his first judgment. So once the judgment is passed, it's done. It's not like this, it's a common thing in current systems in the world. You go to a local court, okay, that court judge did not get the decision in your favor. Okay, let's go to high court. High court guy will give the decision in your favor, fine, now I'm good. But if he did not, okay, then I'm going to go to higher court than that, district court, high court, Supreme Court. And we see that all the time. These kind of judgments are happening. So it's a way, unfortunately, has become a way of buying justice. Who has more power, who has more money, ends up buying the justice this way. And Islam does not allow this way. Okay. Now, number 30, we have like 3 more quick things left, inshallah, and we'll stop. Number 13 thing is, the accused is innocent until proven guilty. This is a principle in Islam. Okay, it was narrated that Abdullah bin Amir said, I set out with a caravan and went, when we came to Doha al-Marwa, a cloak of mine was stolen and one of those people was with us. So my companion said to him, "Oh, so and so, give him back to it, the cloak." And he said, "I did not take it." I went to Umar al-Khattab and told him about it. He said, "Who was there?" I told him, who they were, and I named the one who I thought did it. So he did not have the proof. He just assumed that's the person who took the cloak. And I wanted to bring him in chains. He said, I wanted to bring the person in chains just based on he assumed the person has done it. And Umar said, how could you bring him in chains without any proof? So you have to bring the proof. Simple as that. It's not a popularity contest. Who's more popular or who is more famous among the people? Who is, whether he's Imran Khan or whether he's Shahbaz Sharif or is Zardari. This is not about that. When you talk about justice, justice is based on reality, based on the proof, who provides the proof, not just some gestures or some lip service to the people and assuming now because I can move that many people, hence the justice has to be in my favor. Okay. Now, number 14, and there's two blocks, this and another one more left, inshallah. If there's a text, there is no room for ijtihad. If the Quran and Sunnah has something clear cut about an issue, then there is no ijtihad about this issue anymore. Ijtihad is about something new comes up or something that has a dam. There was not qat'i, there was no definite answer from the Quran and Sunnah. In that case, you do the ijtihad. So ijtihad will only be done when there is no nas like that. Now, last but not the least, judges themselves are subject to ruling on the judges. It's not that judges are above the law. Okay, judges are not above the law. And Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu was the first one to submit to the judges, even when he was at the peak of his power. We know Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, how much Islam spread, how much of an area in his time he was, one of his statements was, besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the earth, he is the second person who has the most power at one point. It's just talking about from the perspective of Allah has given him the authority on the earth. Of course, Allah is the one who has all the power. There is no doubt. And he was only talking about authority from the perspective of at that time when he was alive. We are not comparing Umar al-Khattab to the prophets or anybody else, or even Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, then we are talking about that. When he made the statement, that was more about the authority-wise, the land the Muslims were controlling, and he was the ruler on top of that. From that angle, I am talking also, it will not be taken in an incorrect manner. So now, he said, there's an example where Umar wanted to buy a horse from a Bedouin. Okay, a Baddu, we know the Baddu is a poor person, villager at that time from the desert. So he rode on his camel, on his horse, and the horse became lame. Right? When he became, Umar said, "Take your horse." The man said, "No, we cannot take that horse now. You sat on the horse, and now the horse became lame. Maybe because Umar al-Khattab, mashallah, he was big. I don't know if that's the thing that caused the horse to become lame." So Umar said, "Okay, then appoint a judge, even though he's a Khalifa, even though he is the most powerful person, the one who's ruling on the earth at that time as a human being." And Umar al-Khattab said, "Okay, then make a judge between us." And the man said, "Okay, let's go to Qadi Shuraih." Shuraih was a famous Qadi, rahimahullah. And we talked about him also in the past when we were talking about Qadi Shuraih. Qadi Shuraih he became Muslim at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he did not meet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he was I believe in Yemen. So anyway, but he was a judge between the Khulafai Rashidin era, and he lived, mashallah, long. So Qadi Shuraih said, he said Qadi Shuraih. So they referred to him for judgment. When he heard what they had to say, so he said, "Oh, Amir Mu'minin, take what you bought or give back what you take as you took it." Because he's the one who caused the horse to become lame. So Omar said, "This is the way you pass the judgment." See, he did not say, "Well, change the judge," or "I'm going to bring the judge who's going to give the judgment in my favor," or change all the Supreme Court judges. There was no Supreme Court like that nowadays time, but the way the people do today. The ruler, whoever comes in power, he brings his set of Supreme Court judges. So all the judgments will be passed in their favor. Yeah, because see, all of this in Islam is connected back to what? Fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The accountability that we are in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This awareness we are accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That makes a difference. And that's what it was. That's what caused these the attributes Umar was looking for, he was able to find among the people, and the people were implementing that because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded these positions to be filled by these kind of people, the one who have these attributes. We'll stop here, inshallah, and if there is any questions or comments about the subject, I will try to answer.